Okay, so I'm now going to move on to the anatomy of your transformers. I touched briefly upon that in an earlier section, but now I'm going to go into what you can typically find whenever you repair a transformer. So, as I stated before, your transformer is actually two toys in one. It's either some sort of alt mode, usually a vehicle like Sideswipe here, and a robot, which is what Sideswipe is in right now. That's the mode he's in right now. You'll find that unlike a vehicle, he will have a head, he'll have arms. Well, in this case, this guy doesn't. He'll have like a fist, because most of them would have a weapon that comes with the toy, where you put the gun or the sword or the shield into the fist. And you have your legs, which in some cases would have an individual piece that kind of represents the feet. So in this case, this G1 Sideswipe do not have his feet, whereas the G2 donor Sideswipe does have his feet. So I'll be transplanting these feet, like the feet here, into this guy. I'll show you the other anatomical parts for other transformers. So this is Inferno. Inferno, again, is virtually identical to Grapple. The only difference is that one is a crane and one is a fire engine. So as you can see here, this Grapple has no head, whereas Inferno has a head, but the heads are identical. So in this case, you can see that where the heads is supposed to go for Grapple is missing, because whoever donated this robot to me, he took the head out. What I said about Grapple and Inferno being identical, you can just take Inferno's head out and just transplant it onto Grapple. They have the same design, the production specs. So if you take this guy's head out, there are holes that would fit inside or fit onto these two pigs. To do that, unlike these other tools, you're going to need a heat gun. The heat gun will reset the glue, it'll soften it up, and then you can just slowly wiggle the head out and then put it back on. I'll cover how to use a heat gun in a future video, so stay tuned. Now I'm going to actually do a part swap. So I'm going to focus on Sideswipe, and I do have a near complete red alert here. Red alert, as you can see, he's almost complete. He's only missing the spoiler. I'm still looking for a white spoiler. I'm not saying that you can't use another part, like another spoiler from, say, Sideswipe here, but because white is such a hard color to paint over, especially with this type of plastic, I opt to just be a little bit more patient and wait for another junker red alert so I can transplant that spoiler onto this red alert. But as you can see with this red alert, I'm going to transform him just to show you what he looks like. It might be a little tight. I did kind of tighten them up a little bit to make sure that close to new as possible. So as you can see, again, he's very similar, if not identical, to Sideswipe, with the exception of some of the color swap and that light bar on the top of his head. With the exception of the spoiler here, he's more or less salvage, complete, redone. So I want to get this Sideswipe as close to this condition as much as possible. So I'm going to put Red Alert aside, and I'm going to show you my donor bots for today. As you can see, this Sideswipe is missing his arm, just like this Sideswipe, missing one of the feet, but you can see that he has the wheel that this guy needs and the feet that this guy needs as well. Whereas the G2 Sideswipe, he has the arm intact, the door intact, the feet intact. The only thing that's not intact are the tires and the roof, which both of these G1 Sideswipe have. Now you may also notice that this G1 Sideswipe has a broken off or chipped off roof. So I'm going to take this guy and transfer the roof from this guy to this guy. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to focus on G1 Sideswipe first, and then I'm going to come back to this guy. The idea to fix any of your transformer is, if you can take the easy road, do it. So in this case, right, instead of just taking the feet or one of the foot from G2 Sideswipe, as you can see here, I have a perfectly good foot that this Sideswipe has. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to again, use my scalpel, peel off the sticker, and get access to the screw hole where I can remove this panel and then just take out the foot. So just bear with me here. I'm just gonna take that out carefully. So when you do that, be mindful not to wreck the sticker. As you can see, I'm pushing the sticker very, very gently to minimize the damage. Now, obviously, the exception is if you have a spare set of stickers, you could go nuts and just wreck the sticker and forget about it. But I tend to want to save as much as I can. Now, keep in mind, if you have a heat gun will make this process easier. And as you can see that you're beginning to see the screw that's underneath it, very much like the other side swipe that I did earlier. So at this point, I'll lift up the sticker enough to have access to the screw. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my screwdriver, take this screw out. Now you can take it all the way out, or you can take it out enough so that you can take the panel off without taking the whole screw out. But make sure that when you do that, try not to damage the sticker. Again, I'm assuming you do not have an extra set of sticker. You know what, just for ha-has, I'm just going to take the screw out. Okay, so make sure you don't lose that. And then very much like the other side swipe, just carefully take that out. Okay, and then now you kind of pivot it a little bit. Because sometimes these pins that's holding the leg up, they are kind of fit in by friction. So be very gentle and just slowly wiggle it out until it comes off. As you can see, the pin is still kind of stuck on it. There we go. Okay, so you're wondering, why am I taking this out? And it's because I need to have access to the foot. Because if you look at the way that the foot is, there's a pin to the foot where it goes into the housing of one of the foot or one of the leg panels. So to do that, to be able to put the foot in, you have to take this panel out. I did a little earlier because I kind of want to get the pin out a little easier. But normally, if you just wiggle it just right, it should just come right out. Okay, so I'm going to wiggle this. Comes right out. Same thing with this one. So again, be careful, because even though this part is die cast, this is plastic, so you got to be very gentle. We'll use the pry bar and see if I can push it down a little bit and give it some room so I can pivot it out. There we go. So now what I'm going to do is, because the acceptor side swipe already have the tire, the wheel, instead of taking this and transplanting it onto this leg, I'm just going to simply take the foot out. Remember what I said about the pin earlier? I'm going to take the pin out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this on the rack here. Make sure that it's sat down here, and then make sure the groove is lined up with this, or the pin is lined up with this groove. And then you slowly turn the crank and push the pin out. Okay, make sure it's lined up. And then once you have it lined up, just do it very slowly so the pin gets pushed out. Now again, this is also a time-consuming process. And I have to give you a heads up on this. It doesn't always work. Like, this rack doesn't always work. And in this case, it's really stuck in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the angle. Okay. Set it down. Make sure you have enough support. And you can use one or two things. You can either use the pin pusher and then use the mallet to knock it out. Or what I prefer to do is I would use a smaller screwdriver. Make sure the head is about the same size as a pin. Okay, and when you knock it out, make sure that you have space for the pin to kind of rest into. Like, don't knock it into the plastic part here in the angle. Make sure there's a groove or some sort of opening. So in this case, you will want to set it up like this, like standing vertically. Put the screwdriver in. I'm going to use a slightly smaller one. It's better if you use a flathead, but a Phillip would do. And then you start pounding. Now, why don't I use a plier? And the reason is because when you use a plier, especially for this part, you may stress the plastic here. And when you stress the plastic, there's a good chance you would break it. So using a pin, using the pin pushing method is more preferable than using a pair of pliers and twisting it out. Some of you may wonder, why am I not using a bigger hammer? It's very much like the pliers. If you use more force on it, you'll cause stress around a plastic where the pin sits in. Oh, one thing I do have to mention is don't ever push the pin the long side in to get it out. Always do it the short side out. But once this is loose, the pin will either fall out or it'll just slightly slot out, and then you can pull it out. Now, I do want to comment on the pin itself. You can see that in this leg pin here, there's a raspy part. That raspy part is what makes this pin stay in there so tight. It actually acts as like a little clutch, or it kind of grips onto the plastic. So, rule of thumb is whenever you hit a pin out, there's a good chance that the pin is on the outer side of the bot, because when they assemble this, they would slide a smooth part in like this, and then they would push it in, and then near the end they'll have a tool to push this in with the raspy part so that it holds in place. Never pull a pin by taking out the raspy part in first. You always trying to take it out by the smooth side first. So you always knock the smooth side out first, not the raspy side. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the same pin that I just took out and put it onto this side swipe where it has the wheel. Okay, and then I'm going to put the raspy part in first, because installing it is different from removing it. With installation, if you're careful, you can just put the raspy part in first, kind of like what I just did there. Smooth it out a little bit. Use a flat screwdriver so that it doesn't stick out too much. And then take the foot that I just removed from this guy, carefully slot it in, like so. You basically reverse what you did earlier, or what I did earlier, to put it back in. So put the pin in first on the inner leg, that's on the foot. Make sure they line up, and then you carefully put this piece back in. And again, this takes a little bit of patience, because lining it up is not always easy. And if you don't line it up right, it won't fit and transform properly. So a little patience goes a long way here. So, and just to make sure, test out the feet or the foot. Now you basically reverse what you've done to get the foot out. So what you do is, you see this hole here? You see where the pin housing is? Push it back in, make sure it lines up, and then push it in until it clicks. What you do next is put this cover back on. Make sure it's the right way up. Okay, you don't want to flip it upside down. Like I'll use this donor one as an example. You want to make sure it's right side up, not like this, not like this. Make sure you put it back the way it is. Take the screw that we took out earlier. Make sure it's the right screw. Gently put the screw back in. Make sure you don't do it too quickly so you strip the top of the screw. Okay, and more importantly, when you put it in, don't put it in too tight. Put it in just right, just enough force so that it's snug, not tight, because you don't know when the next time you have to do this again. So once it's in tight or just snug, gently put this sticker over, and in this case I would take my scalpel, try to level the back of the sticker as much as you can, and then use the blunt side of the scalpel. Now I haven't damaged the backing sheet enough, so there's still some stickiness, but in this case, or in some of your attempts, you may not have enough stickiness on your backing sheet. So a glue stick, you can use a glue stick and kind of like spray a little bit of the glue on the back of the sticker and then put it back on. Now you put the other screws back in. Again, very much like this one, put it in, not too tight, just enough force so you don't screw the screw head leg, just to test it out, because you'll have to test out whether or not your repair works. It slides in and out, and more importantly, make sure that this guy can slide back in. tight. So there you go. That's the first step to repairing this broken side swipe. So I cleared the table a little bit here, just to get some of the clutter out of the way. Now that we finish side swipe's left leg and foot, I'm going to do his right foot and leg. So as I said before, if you can, make it easy for yourself. Take what's available, take what's the easiest, and put it onto your acceptor bot from your donor bot. So in this case, as you can see, we're missing the wheel on the right leg, and we're also missing the foot on the right side of Sideswipe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the donor bot here. As you can see, this guy has the wheel on his right side, also has a pin on the right side. And don't know if you noticed, but in the pile of donor parts, I also have the foot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this guy apart, very much like what I did with the left foot. I'm going to transplant everything here to here. So I'm going to begin by peeling off the sticker. I kind of got a little head start. Peel the sticker back so I can have access to the screw on the acceptor bot. I did the same thing for the donor bot. Peeled off the sticker here a little bit. The sticker is kind of in its last legs, I suppose, so don't have to worry about it being too pretty. So very much like the left leg, I begin the process by taking out this panel. Okay, remove it. Again, you got to be careful. Separate the leg from the bot. And as you can see, I have the leg assembly here with the tire. Now, I want to look at the back of this. As you can see, the spoiler on this one is broken, just like this one, but this one is in a somewhat better shape. However, you can see that the paint on this one is not as good as the one on the acceptor bot. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take out this assembly and transplant it onto this robot. So again, very much like what I did with the other one. Carefully take the screws off. Do the same thing with this guy. Now again, the reason why I'm removing this panel is because for me to slot the foot in, you need to have this removed. So for those of you who follow me in the earlier segment, you have to take this part off. Just to give you a little disclosure, the panel I took off from the donor bot, it looks like it is broken. Sometimes it's just part of the game. You have to make do with what you got. So instead of taking this entire panel and donate it on or use it on this bot, I'm going to go back to the pin remover and take the wheel out. As you can see, this wheel is put in by the pin. So what you have to do is very much like what I did with the foot earlier, I'm gonna have to go through the same process. In this case, I just need to tap the pin out enough for me to take the pin out from this side. Again, why do I not use a pair of pliers? Is because the pliers can damage this pin. This pin is a very soft metal. So I don't want to be damaging this cap here. And again, use a lot of patience when you do this. Make sure you hit the pin properly. Now make sure your screwdriver is not too big that it breaks the plastic around it. Okay, so I'm going to use my small screwdriver. Now the good thing about the G1 wheel pins is that they're not fastened in tight as the foot. A lot of these foot pins and a lot of these anatomical parts, they are fastened in a little tighter. But for some reason, the pins on the wheels are not as tight. So it doesn't take as long, but you still have to be patient to make sure you don't damage the part. At this point, you could actually use a pair of pliers, but I still prefer not to use pliers if I don't have to. And I can't use tweezers to take it out. So I'm just going to keep hitting it out. So the reason why this is stuck in is very much like the foot pin. there's a raspy side, a barb side, I guess, that's holding it in place. So you gotta be gentle, gotta be patient. And again, you don't want to use this to pry it too hard because you don't want to damage the wheel, which is made of plastic. This is actually not metal, it's plastic. So you only want to use it to kind of use it to help push the pin out, but at the same time you don't want to damage the pin. And this is the reason why you had to knock the pin from the other side for it to get out. You can see that the tire is really damaged, but that can be replaced. What you would do is you don't pull it out in this situation unless you want to just toss away the tire. In this case, if you want to replace anything that's made of rubber, like the tires, you want to immerse it in hot water to soften it up before you take it out. There you go. So as you can see, the tire, like I said before, it is pretty wrecked. I do have an extra tire here, so I'll be using that. And what you want to do is you want to preserve, even though this is a broken piece, you want to preserve as much as you can. You just never know what you need it for, but in this case, I really doubt that we'll use this piece again. But you know, like I said, you never know. You can always try to repair it. I mean, I do sometimes take broken parts and repair them, but in this case, I probably won't with this guy. Okay, now that we got this tire out, notice that in the back, I didn't use the prying tool and damage it, so it leaves it relatively unscathed. The front is, you know, before it was kind of damaged, but you do not want to damage any further. So I kept it as I guess pristine as, for lack of a better word. You want to keep it as, you know, usable as possible. So this tire obviously has to go. As you can see, it's been chewed up, probably by some animal. But in a future video, I'll show you how to remove the tires properly so that you don't wreck it any further. Okay, so let's put all this back together. And again, I'm just going to keep the tire on this, even though it's wrecked. I'm going to use the leg that came with the acceptor bot and put all this back together. So just to make sure that I have the right pieces, this is the right leg. So the wheel I just took out, or the rim I just took out with the wrecked tire, like this. Again, I will show you how to replace it in a future video. Take the pin in, and you just tap it in. Keep in mind when you do this, the raspy end of the peg is trying to fit itself into the hole, so it's going to take a little while. And also when you do this, careful not to hit the plastic around. And also tap, don't wrap. Like, don't nail it in because you will damage this pin. Okay, so as you can see, it's back in and it's rolling. Never mind the tire. I will fix that in another video to show you how to take the tire out. Now it's time to assemble the feet, or the foot, sorry. Take the old pin out. I had loosened this before. It helps that the part is crumbling. There we go. Okay, make sure that you slot the foot in properly. So make sure it's like this. And the barb side goes into the interior hole. Or the exterior, sorry. And then put the foot in. And then reassemble this leg. Very much like what we did with the left leg. Set the pin in, carefully slot the part in. Voila. Now take the robot, slide this pin back into the housing here, the screw back in. Again, be very careful with it. When you screw it back in, don't put too much pressure or force into it. Slot the leg panel back in. Put the screw back. Make sure it's tight, but not so much that you strip the screw. Use a scalpel and fit the sticker back over. Test if it works. Yep. Yep. So if you do it properly, you Sideswipe leg should look like this. In another video, I'll show you how to take the spoiler out. That's going to use the heat gun. The legs are repaired. We're now going to move on to the arm. So, as I said before, Rail Alert, G2 Sideswipe, and G1 Sideswipe, they're all the same. Rail Alert, of course, has some deco and paint differences, but G2 Sideswipe is pretty much the same except with the colors flipped. So the black is red and the red is black. The white stays white, or in this case it became so yellow is now yellow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to harvest the arm from the G2 Sideswipe and transplant it onto the G1 Sideswipe. However, I am going to keep the arm for G1 Sideswipe because the fist is black whereas the G2 Sideswipe is red, and the chrome on this one is slightly better. So I'm just going to transplant this guy's arm, left arm, onto the G1 Sideswipe. Ideally, if I have another G1 Sideswipe, I would have both arms the same color, but just for the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to take apart the G2 Sideswipe, the screws out from this donor bot. Again, very carefully remove the screws. You don't want to strip them. Okay. Remove this piece. Remove the hood / chest. Set these aside. Okay, so as you can see, this is on a sliding assembly. What I can do is I can just take the clip off of the door or from the shoulder and then just take the whole arm out. But because these things are so fragile and given the age of these things, I would rather take the entire slider assembly out along with the arm. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the other part out, the other side of the upper torso, by removing these screws. Okay. Once you have that, gently take them out. Okay, loosen that up. Take the head out. The head kind of acts like a clamp for that assembly. So take that out. Take that out. The slider comes right off. So it's this arm that we want. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside. I'll do the same thing for this guy. Now, I'm a little nitpicky here. As you can see, this is a little damaged here. Looks like some kid may have played with it and rubbed it against the concrete or something hard and then abrased the plastic. I do have the extra piece here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this after I put it back, or when I put it back. So very much like what I did with G2 Sideswipe. Take this apart. Again, be very careful not to strip the screws while you're doing it. Now, because I do need a screw from this piece to transfer over to this piece, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put it over to the donor piece. Put all the screws there. Set that aside. Put that into the donor pile, like what I did with the other one. Take the hood. Now I'm going to take apart the bot from the top side. Take the screws out. Once I take the screws out, I'll loosen it up a little bit. Okay, and then take the head off to unlock the entire assembly. So as you can see, on the unbroken side, it's all clipped together. But I am missing a panel. So, you know what? Just for ha-has, I'm going to use both arms. Slot it back like this. Now, I am going to use, I guess, the unbroken windshield or the roof assembly. So I'm just going to take this other donor bot apart. Take the assembly, put the screw back in. Okay, just gonna set it here for now. Okay, so I'm gonna use the Sideswipe's head, lock it all this kind of back in, but don't screw it in just yet. Okay, the reason being is that you want to make sure all your screws are aligned. Once you made sure they're aligned, screw the head back on. Okay, again, do it so that you don't strip the screws. Then you start putting back this assembly together. Okay, once you have that, flip it over, extend the arms out just to make sure they work, and they do. Okay, take the hood assembly, and because this one is in better shape than the original one, I'm going to take this one instead. Slot it over his shoulders like this. And I did say that I'm going to use a better piece, the under the hood piece, whatever you call it. I'm going to fit that over, and again, very carefully, I set the screws in, make sure they fit and align. And once you make sure that they're in there, and again, be very careful, just do it slowly so you don't strip the screws, but at the same time make sure they're tight, because if they're not in tight, he won't transform properly. There we go. Make sure you can articulate them, make sure there's no loose piece. Everything seems to be in order. So you pop the head over, you transform them. The head is nice and tight. So as you can see, the arms along the doors are on this side swipe. So ideally, I would like this to be the G1 side swipe, but as you can see, I don't have any more G1 donor parts, G1 side swipe donor parts, so I'm going to settle for the G2. Now, the other thing you got to do is you want to change the arm to the G2 side swipe, and this is a very simple transplant. Just take the screw out here, your larger screwdriver here, and again, be very careful not to strip the screw. Take the screw out, take the entire arm piece out, and then go back to your G1 side swipe donor part. Take the right arm, slot it onto the door, take the screw and the G2 side swipe that you just took out, put it onto the, I guess what you call the elbow, and then screw it back on. Again, do it just tight enough so that it's on, but you don't want to strip the screw, and you don't want to make it too tight because this is an articulation point. And you don't want to put any stress in that joint. So as you can see right now, it works. It's back on. The fist is on the right hand side of the bot, not the left. Okay, so that's how you know you got that right. Repeat with the left side. So again, with the left side, take your screwdriver, carefully take the screw out. Careful not to strip it. And as you can see, the previous person who had this donor bot did unfortunately strip the screw. So you're going to have to use a larger screwdriver, put a little pressure inward, and then take it out. Now you might have to take a larger screwdriver to do this, but as you can see now with a larger screwdriver, it is coming out. So very much like the right side of the arm or the robot, you slowly remove the arm from the elbow joint. Take the old one, take the old G1 donor bot arm, put it in there. Now it's up to you if you want to reuse that strip screw or not, but I don't find the screw to be too badly damaged because I can use a larger screwdriver to take it out. By the same reasoning, you can put it back in. Okay, so just position it over the joint and slowly put the screw back in. Again, careful not to further strip it, not to put too much pressure so that you can swivel it when you need to. Voila. So now you test it by sliding the arm back in with the panel, position the roof, slide everything back together. Okay, and again, the alignment matters because if it doesn't, it doesn't close properly. Now, I realize that the G1 and the G2 version of side swipe might have some tolerance differences during manufacture, but that shouldn't be too much so that you cannot use the parts interchangeably. It is a little tight at first, but it may mean that you might need to readjust it, or you might have to just go back and realign some of the parts. For now, I'm just gonna stop here I will touch upon how to remove some of the parts, such as the spoiler, from the donor bot onto a robot you do want to fix, and how to remove the tires properly. You can either use a heat gun or use some hot water and kind of soften the rubber before you take it out. Otherwise, if you don't, the plastic or the rubber would crack and it will break on you. And if you liked what you watched today, or you have any questions, don't be shy. Leave a comment and feel free to ask me any questions. And if you'd like to see me do more of these, I guess, Junkion repairs, stay tuned.